Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 30th episode of Disability Discrimination Band Starting Now. I am your host, Lindsay. So, back in season 1, you heard me talk to Sam Shusko twice, and I mentioned that Sam was a triplet. And back in episode 23, you heard me talk to Sam's mom, Julie Shusko, and we had talked, of course, about that he is a triplet. So, if you guys have not heard Miss Shusko's episode, then I kindly ask you to leave, go visit, go listen to hers, and then come back. But today, I have the other two brothers that I had mentioned, Alex and John. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
So I gave a little introduction to you guys as your triplets, but can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Do you want to go first, John?
Sure. So I'm John. Like Lindsay said, I am the youngest of the triplets, although by 3 minutes, so I don't know how much that counts. People would disagree with me on that. But Sam is the middle child, Alex is the oldest, and I am the youngest of the three. And I am currently going to grad school in North Carolina doing public health. And I am home for the next couple of weeks. So happy to have some time to talk with Lindsay and Alex and be on the podcast here.
I'm Alex. Like John said, I'm the oldest of the triplets. I am about to start law school at Northwestern in Chicago. I'm still kind of trying to figure out what field of law I want to go into, but this is the perfect time to do that. So, I'm just ready to start that next chapter of my life.
Hey, I was not expecting you, Alex, to be the oldest. I thought it was John, and then
I'll take it. I appreciate that.
Nobody ever thinks I'm the oldest because I have such a baby face, and so they always think I'm the youngest. And then it's 50-50 whether people think John's the oldest or Sam's the oldest. But in reality, I'm the oldest. So.
And that's why you saw me have a shocked face on my look when John explained who's the youngest to the oldest. So, what is y'all's favorite memory with Sam?
I guess I can go first for this one. So my favorite memory with Sam, and I don't think it's one single memory, it's kind of more of a collection of memories. And I might regret saying this, but I think it's traveling with Sam. Sam loves traveling, especially when that traveling involves an airport. And it may not be fun traveling at 4 a.m, but he is always the most excited person I've ever seen to travel with. And it's just nice to be around positive energy like that sometimes.
I would say mine is kind of an amalgamation of different things as well. More, we moved around a lot, going to different schools, and always having, a familiar face. You always have friends everywhere you go because you go to a new school. You might be in a new city, a new state. No matter where you are, like, there's always, Sam is there. You always have somebody to chat with, have lunch with, hang out with, and, we know that we're there for each other no matter where we are.
Yeah. So what was Sam like growing up?
I can start this one. So for the first, I think, I could be wrong on this one, but for the first maybe 2 years, I think, or so of his life, Sam actually didn't speak. He was very quiet growing up. And
like
he grew older
at all?
No, not a word. I think he cried and stuff like that, but I don't think he, spoke for a couple years after he was born. And he's more than made up for that with interest. But he was very quiet growing up, and then as he grew a little bit older and got more confident, you could see kind of the switch. And he kind of turned into this very outgoing, positive, talkative person that he would always find somebody to chat with about anything, and he could just go up to a random stranger on the street and chat with them about more than just like the weather, and I think as he grew up, he definitely became more confident and comfortable in himself.
Yeah. And he always likes to talk about classes that he loves.
Oh yeah.
Him and
Oh,
I
yeah.
would talk over the class, just how much we love course. The
Oh yeah. No, and
And
you're right. I
Beacon.
mean, get him started talking about Beacon and he can talk about Beacon for a long time. You
Oh,
know,
he
he's
loves
very
Beacon,
passionate about it.
which is good. I like
No,
that
it's good to
passion.
hear.
So your dad was in the military for 35 years. And for a few times you guys moved internationally out of all the countries. And first, I want to say, if Mr. Shuskos listens to this, thank you for your service. But out of all the countries y'all lived, which one was y'all's favorite?
So, for some context, you know, besides living in the US, we've also lived in Okinawa, Japan, and Bahrain. And then, you know, among other places domestically here in the US. And for me, my favorite by far was Japan. You know, I liked Bahrain, of course, and the food was good, but, you know, Japanese food is really next level. First of all, I mean, I have not really had a single Japanese food that I haven't liked, and to be surrounded by that for 4 years was incredible. And you know, not just being in Okinawa, but Okinawa is a 2 hour flight from Tokyo. It's a 2 hour flight from Seoul, 2.5 hours from Beijing. And so living in Okinawa not only was incredible because Japanese food is incredible, Japan is one of my favorite countries in the entire world, but it opens up so many chances for you to travel and pretty affordably to a bunch of really cool neighboring places. And so I really think it's unbeatable.
Do you remember some Japanese?
John and I, you know, we both took Japanese in school for the entire time we were there, and we both actually continued studying it in college. And so, you know, my speaking is definitely not where it should be. But I do try to keep up with it and watch Japanese shows every now and then just so that I retain at least a little bit of it.
And it's really cool too, because when you're living overseas, also to echo Alex's point, that was my favorite place as well that I've lived, just because of the opportunities. You are so close to places that a lot of people in America kind of only dream about, or if they want to go to those places, you have to travel for, 24 hours to get out there, like Thailand or Korea or some of those really cool places. Australia is really far. It's closer to Japan than it is to the US. And just being able to travel pretty affordably, like Alex said, is fantastic. And with the Japanese, you kind of learn practical Japanese as well, because you use it in the real world. You take what you learn in the classroom and you learn how people actually speak, and you get to have those conversations in real time versus learning a language here in the States that you might not have the ability to practice all the time because you're not around people that might speak that language. But there, every day you see people that speak it. So it really helps with your comprehension and learning skills in a way that I'm very thankful for.
Oh, I agree. And, you know, I just want to add to that Okinawa was an especially cool place to live because not only did we get to practice our Japanese skills and learn, you know, how people actually speak Japanese, but it's this really cool mix of cultures. It was its own country for hundreds of years. And for some of those years, it was pretty heavily influenced as a tributary state to China. And so there were a lot of Chinese influences in the architecture and the food and the culture, but you know, those influences didn't really stop there. You know, Japan took over Okinawa in the 1800s, and then it was briefly a US territory a bit after World War II. And so Okinawa has this really interesting mix of American, Japanese, Chinese, and then local Okinawan cultures that kind of all come on display on this one small island. You know, there's this kind of cuisine there called taka rice, which is basically just a Chipotle bowl. I mean, it's the story goes, and I don't know how true this is, that soldiers in Okinawa back in like the 60s or 70s wanted tacos, but there were no tortillas. And so some Japanese restaurant owner said, hey, what if I put rice on the bottom and then ground beef, cheese, salsa, and everything on top instead of tortillas? And then it became a hit, and it's now an Okinawan staple. And so it's really interesting to get to see those mix of cultures because you don't really see those four cultures kind of fused together in anywhere else outside of Okinawa. And that just manifests itself in so many really interesting ways.
That sounds really good.
I highly recommend.
So when I talked to your mom, I had asked her the question, like with you guys, how did she talk to you to really understand Sam's limitation? At what age did you guys really understand his limitation, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I can start with this one. So, I mean, my mom always taught us, growing up, everybody's different. And that's something that I think she talked about as well when she was a
Yeah.
guest on your podcast a couple episodes ago. And that's something that I think she really kind of instilled in us when we were younger, that people might not always have the same needs and people might need more time or process things differently, right? And so I would say maybe late elementary school. So maybe third, fourth grade or so is kind of really when I started to understand that Sam just needed a little bit different resources, needed a little bit of help, and there's nothing wrong with that because my mom had always told us that everybody's different. And that doesn't mean that he's any further ahead or further behind. It's just people are at different stages and they need different resources. And so I'd say about third or fourth grade is kind of when I started to understand that.
And building off of that, our mom kind of hinted at this as well in her podcast with you, but she never wanted us to think that Sam couldn't achieve what he wanted to do. I mean, Sam is fully capable of achieving anything that he wants to. He is one of the most hardworking people I've ever met. And so, she didn't ever sit us down at one point and just walk us through what was happening because she didn't want us to view Sam as different than us and different in the sense that he couldn't do the things that we could do because he absolutely can. And so, it was more just over time, we were exposed to Sam and we kind of gradually started to put the pieces together, but that never changed our opinion of Sam because we'd never been told that he couldn't do the things he wanted to do. And we'd seen firsthand he could absolutely achieve anything he wanted, even if it took more time. And so, we never really thought that he had a limitation, if you will, because he can absolutely achieve anything he wants to.
And
Yeah.
I think my mom also had talked about this a little bit on her episode with you, but she had mentioned something about, we didn't allow Sam the space to, fall behind, for lack of better words, so to speak. We kind of helped him kind of challenge himself and really kind of push forward when he thought he wasn't able to do something. Having triplets, I think, is also different than having siblings that might be different ages. You might have an older sister, younger brother, whatever, who are a couple years apart. That's different, because every person is kind of on their own, like, development stage and playing field. But when you have triplets, you have three people that are in the same age, in the same classes, have the same friends, and I think that really kind of challenges you a little bit. And I think that that's also helped him as well to, like Alex said, be a really hard worker and just push himself and challenge himself in a way that, even I haven't done as well at times. And so I really admire that about Sam.
Yeah, he is one of the hardest workers in the world from what I've seen with him in class and talking to him while he's in graduate school as well. So, what have y'all learned from Sam?
This I think is something that I was kind of talking about earlier as well, but I've learned to have more of a positive attitude from Sam. I'm not really sure how he's had such a positive attitude. I mean, he's, been faced with so many challenges and he's had to overcome so much adversity. And yet through all of that, he is still the most positive person that I think I've ever met. And so, interacting with Sam for the past 23 years of my life has absolutely shown me the benefits of a positive attitude.
And building on that as well, I've also learned that different people might take a different path to get to the same place. Everybody does things differently. They understand the world differently. They process things differently. They hear differently. They might learn things differently, but everybody still reaches the end of their path, even if they might get there a different way. And that's completely okay. what you might be taught in school, one way that you might be taught math might not make sense for everybody, or a way that you learn how to read might not make sense for everyone in the classroom. And so just understanding that everybody's on their own path is something that I've really learned as well. And it doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you just keep pushing through it and working hard. And Sam's absolutely done that.
Yeah, and one thing I always think is that anyone with a limitation has two options, you could say. Either be positive and push through and prove people wrong like Sam has, or just complain and make y'all feel bad for everyone. But I chose the first one that I mentioned because I feel like in a way people can learn from Sam and I. We can, like, they can learn anything from us. And for people not to underestimate people with any limitation, because we will prove you wrong.
I can guarantee you that Sam has been underestimated time and time again, and yet he proved people wrong every time. So you're absolutely right about that.
There are 40 million Americans living with a disability in the United States. If there is a person who has a sibling that they either just learned that they have a disability or learning difference, if they came to you y'all asking for advice on how to help them, what would you say?
My biggest thing that I would say to somebody in that situation would be to just have a little grace and kindness and compassion. When everybody is trying to figure out how to do this thing that we call life, right? And so just having to kind of look back on that and just see, you're trying to figure that out for yourself, and Sam might be figuring that out for himself. Alex is also doing the same thing at the same time. And just having a little compassion and understanding when things might be a little frustrating sometimes, or you might have to kind of explain things a little bit differently, or just slow down a little bit and just kind of understand, where people are coming from and kind of where they are in that stage. So just the understanding and compassion is what I would say to somebody that's in that situation.
And I would add to never place limits on your sibling. Let them tell you what their limits are, if any. Your job is to be supportive in any way that you can. And with your support, and like John said, your grace and time, your sibling will absolutely be able to do anything they want. And so never place limits on them or tell them what they can't do.
I really like what you both said. And if at y'all's colleges, if you ever heard someone who's met Sam and make a rude comment or discriminatory about him, what would y'all say to them?
I mean, no one at my college really said anything like that about Sam, just because, we went to completely different colleges and everything, and we kind of had different circles there. But, growing up in school, in grade school, there absolutely were people who would make comments about Sam's limitations. And, the first thing that I would tell them is to just mind their own business. Sam's path is his own path. And if it takes him longer to get there, or he gets there a different way than you, then how does that affect you in any way whatsoever? People are on their own journeys, and they need to have the time and the patience from others to be able to live that journey.
First off, all my friends love Sam. They ask about him.
Oh, Sam, they ask about him more than me.
They still ask about him, and they're like, how's Sam doing? So they all love Sam. Let me just say that. But to echo what Alex said, definitely growing up, there were some comments here and there. And I would do a similar response to Alex and just tell them to take a step back and mind their business, because as long as Sam isn't hurting anybody, what does it matter? How he's processing things, how he's kind of forging that path that we talked about earlier. And it really isn't anyone's business but his own. It's not mine. It's not anybody else's. And if he wants to reach out and ask for some support or some help, I'm glad to help, but at the end of the day, you know, that is his own journey for him to kind of learn and figure out. And like Alex said, not place any limitations on, both for himself, placing limitations on himself, or for other people placing limitations on him, telling him what he can and can't accomplish.
Yeah, and one thing you've heard me say in past episodes, I think it was with our professor, Dr. Nance, but I'm not sure if it was with her. They don't know the story that happened before you went to that school. Like they don't know. They might think he's weird or something. He's not weird at all. But they don't know. So don't open up your mouth if you do not know the last 22 years or however long that you've known them before.
And honestly, everyone's a little weird in their own ways, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think everyone's a little weird.
What do you think the world can learn from y'all's brother?
You know, you can go, John.
No, go ahead. I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
You know, Sam is probably the most social and friendly and outgoing person that I've ever met. And that's a really good skill to have. And you know, is coming from someone who's relatively introverted, you know, now that I'm kind of out in the world, I've started to really see the benefits of being a more outgoing person. You know, so much of your career opportunities and just different kinds of opportunities in life in general are based on networking. And, you know, that impression that you leave on people when you meet them for the first time, it sticks. They're going to remember you by that. You know, Sam, when we lived in bases growing up, you know, he knew everyone on the bases. We would be walking through the mall on the base, the PX, and as we walked by every shop, the people who worked there would be like, "Oh, hi Sam, hi Sam," and you know, everyone said hi to Sam, and you know, he left an impression on them that I guarantee you they still remember who he is today, and they remember how he made them feel. Because every time he walked by, not only did they say hi Sam, but you know, you could see their face just light up with like a massive smile. And that's not something that's easy to replicate at all. But I guarantee you that they remember how they felt even today. And that matters in life because, you know, so much of the different opportunities that you can have in life, you get not by just sitting and waiting around, but by being friendly to other people and being a genuinely nice person. And you know, you can really go far in life by being friendly and nice. And, you know, I think the world can absolutely learn how to do that from Sam, who is the most friendly, nice person I've ever met.
And also, one thing that I think the world can learn from Sam is just knowing your worth and knowing your value and what you contribute to your social circles, you know, society, your friends, your family. And I think that that's something that Sam's always been, he's always excelled in. He's always been very confident in knowing what he can contribute. Like Alex said, you know, he'll just be walking through the store and everyone will be like, "Hi, Sam," and they'll all know him. And, you know, that confidence, I think, is something that the world can know because Sam knows his value. He knows his worth and what he can contribute. And I think that that's something that a lot of people, and myself included, are still trying to figure out, you know, and that's something that I really respect.
Yeah, and I'm kind of echoing what y'all just said about Sam, but when you talk to Sam for the very first time, you don't want to stop talking to him. Like he'll be a great friend. He'll give you advice whenever you need it, but you literally do not want to stop talking to Sam if you're talking to him. But so this is more of a question on you guys. What would y'all say to your younger self?
Really, just you don't know what people are going through in their personal lives, you know? Not all learning differences are visible. Not all outward differences are visible, you know? And this also just kind of circles back to that, just having some compassion towards other people because you don't know, you know, they might have a learning difference. They might have just had a really crappy day and you just have to just roll with the punches and just understand that everybody's going through something different. And they might be having a good day, they might be having a bad day, they might be having a learning difference, and you just have to have a little bit of compassion with that.
And I think it's also really important to be patient. That's good advice for a sibling with a learning difference, because they may have a different process of getting to a final answer. And I think it's important to be understanding and patient, because that process may be different than your own. And that doesn't make it wrong in any way whatsoever. And so it's important to be, open-minded about that process and be patient that, the final product will come. But also, just patience is a virtue to have, generally speaking. Dealing with a sibling, with learning differences, or just dealing with life in general. And so I think it's really important to build up those skills now.
Well, guys, thank you. We got through all the questions that I had for y'all. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Can tell you I learned a little bit more about your brother talking to you guys and talking to your mom.
Well, thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
And I really like what you're doing here too. I don't think that learning differences get talked about enough at all. It's something that, and certainly when we were growing up, learning differences really weren't talked about outside of our family at all. I mean, except for a few isolated cases, of course. And so, I'm really glad that you're spreading awareness of this, because, hopefully not just people who have siblings with learning differences, but people who just interact with anyone with learning differences will learn to be more patient and accepting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was very, very quick that I started this podcast, and I had noticed what I'm talking about, like y'all have heard past episodes. No one's tackling the topics that I am, but I feel like what's good is the host and me having your brother on. We both have learning differences. So it's not just me talking, guessing like what's going on. We have the experience so you can hear the truth.
And I like that you have a bunch of different people with a bunch of different backgrounds. You said you have yourself and Sam that have been on the show. You've had Dr. Nance, you've had my mom, Alex, and I, and a bunch of other guests on your show as well. And just being able to listen to that whole series would definitely give a very good overview and just really good information. Just because, like Alex said, there's not much coverage on learning differences right now. And so being able to have that open dialogue, I think, is absolutely important can really benefit everyone in any capacity,
And I really hope, and I encourage everyone to listen to all the episodes. But I really hope like people will learn and then realize, okay, I can't make a rude comment about someone with a learning difference, with a limitation, because I don't know what their childhood was like growing up, but I also don't understand what changes you could say have to be made in order to help like Sam excel, which he's absolutely doing. So, like I said earlier, if you don't know, don't open up your mouth.
Yeah, far too many people in this world have no idea what they're talking about, and yet that does not stop them from talking anyways.
Absolutely. It's not a bad way to live your life, just in general. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
That's what I always say to anyone. I'm like, if you have nothing nice to say, don't open up your mouth. I don't say it at all, but I feel like don't open up your mouth.
I like that more.
Well, I will talk to you guys soon. And thank you everyone for listening to Alex and John. I really hope y'all have learned a lot from them. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye, guys.
Bye, Lindsay.